We're talking to Attorney McDonald, and of course the issue is racism, diversity, and tolerance. And I think, Attorney McDonald, we promised that we would allow you to continue this discussion of superiority, inferiority, and I think it's a subject that is certainly worthy of a discussion, because we find so many people today without any real idea exactly where that places them in reference to their thoughts and their beliefs in reference to these concepts.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Right before we went on break, we were talking about what happened with, again, over 6 million Jews during World War II. What we also, I think, need to make reference to is what Americans did during World War II. The Japanese internment camps that existed and had so many Japanese Americans that were basically stripped of their businesses. Homes were taken away from them, and they were basically put into what you might call a domestic concentration camp to some degree. So when we talked about what happened in Germany, it would be so unfair to single them out as if they had a monopoly, so to speak, on this ideal of superiority, because they don't.
It's a human
It is
problem.
a human. It is a part of the human condition, and you see it not just related to groups that are different in terms of race. You see it in terms of religion. You see it in terms of economic status. You also see it occurring within races. One of the things I find fascinating is, for example, this whole idea that during the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were schools that were established for blacks and had something that was called the brown paper bag test. And the idea that if you were darker than that brown paper bag, you're not admitted in those schools. Well, that is a issue related to tolerance. And it is a type of racism, again, that exists within a race. Within a race. And so when we talk about tolerance, it clearly goes beyond the traditional types that we tend to think about. I think what's important, again, is that we start to recognize that it is a problem and have a dialogue like this that will permit the issue to be brought to the forefront. It's one of those things that's almost like taboo. You talk about it behind closed doors, but the reality is that it exists out in the public today. How do you teach your young people or your children to respond to someone who has a disability, and recognizing that if someone is disabled, that doesn't mean that they don't lack the capacity, ability to do other things. The whole labeling that we put on people with disabilities, for example, at one point they were called handicapped. Well, you and I both know that that term relates back to the 1700s, when someone who was poor would stand in the courtyard square with their cap in their hand asking for money. And so for us to use that type of labeling to address or to identify someone because of some birth defect or mental defect is dangerous. And that's the type of labeling that if it's not addressed properly, those young people will carry on through high school and their adult lives. And so
and it will have a tremendous impact upon them personally, upon their lives personally.
Yes, it will. And so if it's teaching tolerance at the pre-K, or I should say K through 12 grade period, is critical. I wish I had been exposed to those types of opportunities. I was fortunate in a lot of ways because having grown up in Buffalo, grew up in public housing that was quite diverse. Some of my closest friends were Italian Americans and Puerto Ricans, and some of them were Native Americans, and those experiences really carried over for me through in my adult life. Not everyone has those experiences, but those being exposed to different cultures at a very young age helped me understand that not everyone is like me.
And it gave you a different view of the world too,
yes.
I would imagine.
Yes, it did. I mean, what's strange is that, yes, we were all living in public housing, but but the reality is that we all have our differences. And to have a great appreciation for different groups, their languages, respecting their cultures, respecting their ideologies. Again, that's what tolerance is about. We don't have to accept it as our own, but we do have to respect it as being part of someone's rights as a human being to be different.
And so you've indicated, you've talked about religious intolerance, and you've talked about economic intolerance, and in other words, as you indicated earlier, it's simply a human condition, and the only way that we can deal with it is recognize it. Now, as a minister, what would you suggest in terms of your ministerial experiences that we could do in order to deal with this as an issue? You see, so which is to say that we've got a problem of racism in this country, we've got a problem of folks not willing to recognize diversity, and we've got a problem of other problems that we've talked about, tolerance and intolerance. Now, what would you suggest that we might be able to do to bring about a greater understanding of all of these things to a wider public?